blast from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo.
Welcome to the CoCo Crew Podcast. A delicious adventure into the world of retro computing news and information. Featuring the Tandy Color Computer.
Hey, you got your CoCo 3 yet?
CoCo.
All right, welcome CoCo Cruisers and CoCo Maniacs, whatever other kind of CoCo people we have out there. You're listening to episode 80 of the CoCo Crew Podcast. Woohoo! Let's see, I'm John Linville, and of course I'm joined here by my regular set of co-hosts. So we've got Neil Blanchard. Hello, Neil.
Hello, John, and everyone listening.
Mike Rowan. Hello, Mike.
CoCo Cruisers assemble.
And Mr. Boise Pete. Hello, Boise.
CoCo forever.
All right, doing well. Everything's going pretty good. It's almost the end of January. CoCo Fest is, I said 3 months. Is that right? Or maybe it's more like 4 months. 4 months away, I guess, right? Tandy Assembly coming up at the end of September, so that'll be, 8 months away. Not quite this normal separation, but, we've had some schedule changes over the past couple of years that we're still accounting for. We're all looking forward to that. I think we're all going to meet up at CoCo Fest. Well, I guess Neil's still stranded. Hopefully things will clear up by CoCo Fest, but we'll see. All right, well, what's everyone doing? Anyone working on some CoCo stuff? Over the Christmas break, I finally got back into, took a little time to open up KiCad and work on a couple of PCB layout-related projects that I've kind of had in mind for a while. Well, one that I'm not quite ready to talk about, and one that I kind of announced or whatever was more of a throwaway, but I did a little joystick tester board that lets you plug in a joystick and make some lights go on and off with the button presses and the joystick movements. Some people ask, well, why not just plug it into a CoCo to test? And so, well, that's fine if you got your CoCo and a monitor and want to load up some software. But if you just want to plug in the joystick and see if it works, that's the idea here. Got some other stuff going, but I'll probably leave that for the future too. But you sold out a Blockdown. Are you working on the next thing yet?
Yeah, I finished up over the holidays the Blockdown cartridges. So there's only a couple left, so it was pretty successful. Good to see that.
Cool.
Awesome. I've been working on ramping up on the Turbo 9 stuff for the semester, so that's sort of CoCo related.
Yeah, that's cool. I've been playing Blockdown.
Cool. Well, playing Blockdown, that's a good, that's CoCo, right? That's good.
Absolutely.
How about acquisitions? You got anything recently, or picked up had any discoveries down at the throw or anything like that?
I got Blockdown.
Sure. Okay. Well, I bought a lot of little parts for building the joystick testers.
I was thinking that joystick tester would come in hand for when I built Gamesters.
Well, yeah, I mean, it might.
What are your production plans on that? Or is it going to be? Are you going to make that available as a kit, or you can sell units, or what's the plan?
Well, I was just leaning towards just putting together some kits. There's not a lot of much of anything. It shouldn't be a very high dollar item. So I mean, it'll probably be a DIY kit. Solder stuff on a board. Not 100% settled at this point, but I don't know what the market will really be like for that. I think there's probably a handful of people that would want one just because, well, why not, right? Anything you produce, there'll be somebody who wants one. I don't predict Hordes of CoCo is trying to beat down my door for them, but you never know, I guess. I figured I'd put together a few kits and probably have it at CoCo Fest. We'll see, and then maybe by Tandy Assembly, it'll be more clear what the market is. So maybe there'll be kids at Tandy Assembly, or maybe I'll have gone full out into production and have boxes and everything by then.
Yeah, I think it'd be a fun little kit for people to assemble. So
Oh, for sure.
that's very cool.
So anyway, I did do a video, showed it working with a prototype, and the board. I kind of chose some bad prints for a couple of things that you can assemble the board, but it's not as quite as easy or nice as it ought to be. So I have a respin of the board. The biggest difference of the respin of the board versus what's in the video is in the video I just had wires to connect between the joystick connector and the board itself. And ironically, of course, I actually had a PCB mount joystick connector, but then it soldered wires to it and put those to the board. Anyway, the biggest part of the respin is I've actually got the layout is for a PCB mount joystick connector. But I mean, it's cool. You pop in a 9-volt battery, and so it has its own. It has a switch, and so kind of cute, kind of fun. I don't know how useful it really is, but like I said, kind of was something fun to do, and not a lot of effort. So, why don't we call this an introduction and take a break, and then we'll be back with some announcements.
New from ENG Systems Laboratories, the keyboard beeper cartridge. It plugs right into your color computer's expansion port, but still allows you to connect any other device using the inline transparent expansion port. The cartridge has an onboard speaker. Hear a beep as any key is pressed, significantly reducing typing errors. LED power indicators monitor the 5-volt, plus 12-volt, and minus 12-volt power supplies. Flip a switch to enable or disable a cartridge detect line. Power up into basic or a game pack. Best of all, it has an easily accessible reset switch right on the cartridge pack. No more feeling around blindly behind the computer trying to find the reset switch. All of these features and no modifications to your color computer are required. The keyboard beeper cartridge is just $59.95 plus postage and handling. Another great product from ENG Systems Laboratories, Springfield, Virginia.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back. And now it's time for some announcements. As we mentioned earlier, you are listening to the CoCo Crew Podcast. We are available on Twitter with a Twitter handle of @CoCo Crew Podcast. That's @CoCo CREWPODCSC. If you are prone to sending tweets, feel free to tweet at us. We may tweet back to you. We, of course, also are available on Facebook with a separate group here called the CoCo Crew Podcast. That's 4 separate words. Let's see, we are a podcast, so along with the RSS feed that's available at cococrew.org, if you are not quite that DIY with your podcasting, then we are available through Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and if you prefer to stream, well, then we're available with streaming on Spotify, on Stitcher, and through TuneIn. For some time, we have been making a version of the podcast available on YouTube. It's basically just the audio podcast, a simple transformation to some mostly still frame video with the addition of the animation of our voice waveform on top. If you're hearing impaired, or if English is a second language for you, or otherwise if you have trouble understanding us due to, our accents or whatever else, YouTube does pretty well with subtitles. So you can read instead of listening to any part hard to understand. So anyway, there's a link in the show notes to the playlist on YouTube. Let's see, we are a member of the Throwback Network. The Throwback Network is a list of retro-themed podcasts, mostly centered around 80s culture, as well as gaming and retro computing, retro gaming. If you're all caught up on the CoCo Crew Podcast and looking for something else to listen to, then we recommend that you check out the Throwback Network. Similarly, if you're all caught up, want to look for another podcast, then you should check out the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub. The podcasts listed there are all related to retro computing and retro gaming. Check it out, the Game by Game Podcast Information Hub. Audio for the CoCo Crew Podcast is hosted by Cyber Ears. You will get unlimited bandwidth and your audio on your terms. If you need to host audio on the internet, whether it be for your home podcast or church or your social club or whatever, we recommend that you check out for years. All right, if you want to reach out to any of the hosts of the CoCo Crew Podcast, we have some email addresses available. Show, SHOW, at CoCoCrew.org, @CoCoCrew.org, podcast, PODCAST, at CoCoCrew.org, and feedback, FEEDBACK, at CoCoCrew.org. So send email to any of those addresses. It'll reach all the hosts. So if you want to tip us off your greatest new project or some other piece of retro news, if you want to ask a question or tell us what a good job we've done or tell us what a bad job we've done, feel free to reach out. We always love to hear from you. And if you want to reach out to just one of us specifically for whatever reason, then I'm available as John, JOHN.org. Neil is available as Neil, NEIL, at CoCoCrew.org. Mike is available as Mike, MIK, at CoCoCrew.org. And Boise is available as Boise, BOISY, at CoCoCrew.org. So that's the end of our kind of fixed announcements. Now we've got a few events in real life that we think might be of interest to our listeners. Coming up April 22nd through the 24th, we have Vintage Computer Festival East. VCF East 2022 will be an in-person show, still scheduled for 3 days. This year's theme, Women in Computing, Computers for the Masses. So it's cool up in Wall, New Jersey, at InfoH Science Center, which is an old Army post with some history related to Marconi or radio such things. So it's got some nice museum stuff there. Anyway, if you're up in the northeast part of the United States, sort of the not quite New York, we're close to the New York City area. If you're going to be up there in late April, check out the Vintage Computer Festival East. April 29th through May 1st, 2022, we have the Midwest Gaming Classic. This will be held at the Wisconsin Center, Wisconsin Avenue in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Midwest Gaming Classic is a trade show featuring 150,000 plus square feet of retro and modern home video game consoles, pinball machines, arcade video games, tabletop RPG, computers, tabletop board games, crane games, collectible card games, air hockey, and that's just the start. Ron Clown always tells us this is a great event. If you're in the northern part of the Midwest in late April or early May, we recommend that you check out the Milwaukee Gaming Classic. So coming up 14th through the 15th, so May 14th and 15th, 2 days, we've got the 2022 edition of the last Chicago CoCo Fest. This will be held at the Holiday Inn, Elk Grove Village, Illinois, in Elk Grove Village, Illinois. Great event for CoCo stuff. See lots of CoCo people, various CoCo groups meet up and share the love of CoCo there in Elk Grove Village, Illinois, May 14th and 15th, 2022. All right. Coming up by 15th through the 17th, we've got the Southern Fried Gaming Expo. This will be held in Atlanta, Georgia at the Marriott Renaissance Waverly. Pretty cool event. The Southern Fried Gaming Expo features more than 250 arcade and pinball machines, dozens of new and retro console systems, a massive tabletop library, exciting panel sessions, guest speakers, and so much more. So, very cool if you're going to be in the southern part of the states in mid-July of 2022. We recommend you get to Atlanta and check out the Southern Fried Gaming Expo. All right, coming up July 19th through the 24th, Kansas Fest, the Apple II event. If you're into Apple II stuff, this is the event where they for years met in Kansas City, Missouri, and had rooms in a college dorm and hung out and talked Apple II all day. Cool event. It says Apple, but Apple II stuff will wash off. So if you're available in mid to late July, looking for a retro event, we recommend you check out Kansas Fest. Next on the list, VCF West. August 6th through the 7th of 2022, held at the Computer History Museum, Mountain View, California. Never been. It's a great event. I'm sure it is. GCF West. That brings us now to the biggest, baddest, awesomest event in the CoCo calendar, and even the TRS-80, the Z80 line calendar as well. Talking, of course, about Tandy Assembly. Tandy Assembly will be held September 30th through October 2nd, 2022. Tandy Assembly, the big event in the CoCo world. It's an awesome event. Lots of good camaraderie, but not only CoCo, also the Z80 folks and some of the Pocket Computer folks, 100 folks, even some Tandy 1000 folks. It's a cool event held in Springfield, Ohio. Very exciting stuff. With that, why don't we take another little break, and then we'll be back with some news.
You're coming in loud and clear. Must be a realistic CB radio.
10-4, good buddy. It's my new 40-channel Realistic. Radio Shack's got it on sale right now for only $79. I saved $60.
That Realistic sure is a good brand.
10-4 on that. You can depend on Realistic.
Where you headed now?
Back to Radio Shack. The new 4K TRS-80 color computer is on sale for just $349.
10-4, good buddy. Color graphics, sound, joysticks. Talk to you later.
Whoa, where you going?
Radio Shack, of course.
The Realistic 40-channel CB radio and TRS-80 color computer on sale now. Only at Radio Shack, a Tandy company.
Take your CoCo beyond the limits of tapes and diskettes. With your modem and a local phone number, you can connect to Delphi, your complete business and personal resource. Delphi has special groups for owners of the Tandy color computer, including Rainbow Magazine Online and OS9 Online. Select from thousands of downloadable programs. Meet friends from around the globe, or tap into the world's most comprehensive database to expand your knowledge. No extra charges for using TimeNet or Telenet. No monthly minimums. No premium for 1200 or 2400 BPS connection. And connection rates are as low as $7.20 per hour. Delphi, the world's premier online information service.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back. Now it is time for this month's news segment. Let's see, our first item of news, a little game announcement from Mr. Jim Gary. The game is called Capture, a puzzle/board game by Mac Oglesby, converted from Commodore PET Force to TRS-80 MC10. This version is from 1980. It was very entertaining. The link, of course, is to a YouTube video. He does have a URL in the description of there that would seem to point at the source code. So, not only do you get a game, you can educate yourself on how it works. Very cool. Thank you, Mr. Jim Gary. The next link is a Facebook link from Mr. Richard Kelly. And it says, you've dealt with it in ECB yourself, no doubt, that dreaded press Y if the screen is blue and if it's red code. Wouldn't it be much easier in ECB if someone already had the code that shows that red or blue screen, draws the letters on top, telling you to press Y or N, and then it stores the red or blue colors in variables A and B? Well, this code does just... So basically, Mr. Kelly, in that code, the sort of boilerplate code that I'm sure we're all familiar with as CoCo people, that shows blue versus red, which always seem more like blue versus orange to me, but whatever. If you have the need or want to use the P-Mode 4 graphics to do color screens, and you don't want to write the code to do the basically what color is showing now stuff, then you can pick up this contribution from Mr. Kelly. Very cool. Thank you, Richard. Awesome. The next link, this is from Rocky Hill. Testing the Ackery board, Rev 1.1.0, a replacement for the ST77526P custom chip. So if you listen to the tech segments in the first year or so of this of the show, At some point, I covered the special chips, or the custom chips were available, starting with the Color Computer 2. I guess they both were used in the Color Computer 3 as well. Anyway, one of them is the SALT serial and level transfer chip, sort of a power supply chip or power regulator chip, and then the other one, rack chip, which took some of the other random logic from the CoCo 1's motherboard and consolidated into this other chip that it has, amongst other things, the DAC, which is used for generating sounds on the CoCo 2. Or the DAC is used on all the CoCos, of course, but the DAC chip is on the CoCo 2 and the CoCo 3. So they're pretty unobtainable at this point, except from robbed from a dead CoCo, or maybe even not dead CoCo. And so having replacements for those is very cool. Rocky Hill here is demonstrating his replacement. There might be others in the work, but either way, it's good to have these available for people who have dead, dying, or damaged CoCos. Keep them all alive as long as we can. Very cool. Very nice, Rocky. Good to see it. Thank you. Moving on, we've got, well, it's really two links, but they're both from Alan Huffman on sort of the same topic. First link's titles of the CoCo's lesser-known screen color. Talks a bit about putting the 6847 into the, basically turning on the CSS, the color set select bit in the configuration register. So instead of dark green on light green, you get a, let's call it dark orange on light orange screen on the CoCo. There was software back in the day that would use this, and I'd see it, but nothing in the CoCo manuals, or at least not the basic, because I don't think anything in there ever actually explained what was happening. So I was, 10 years old, whatever. Had no idea I just figured that was some magic machine language stuff or whatever. Anyway, it turns out it's not all that hard, especially just mode with CSS on. So Alan goes and digs down into this some and relates it to some of the basic commands or whatever. Specifically, I think he's looking at some of the emulators and how they behave and the surprises he may have found there. There's two links. So there's a second article also on Vintages of New Old, and it's the CoCo's lesser-known screen color revisited. It kind of goes a little more in-depth into the same topic, again with some emphasis on the emulator, it looks like. Thank you, Alan. It's nice to see you when you write up some of these articles. It's always entertaining.
First one I have is from friend of the show, Jim Gary. He's wrote, L. Curtis Boyle has found a new MC-10 game. Anyone else know about this? And then followed by that, Jim Gary also writes another one on Facebook here, a message, and it says, oh my, there's even more. Thanks for letting me know, L. Curtis Boyle. Checking out this game, this looks pretty in-depth for an MC-10. Definitely looks machine language for sure. It reminds me of a little bit of, kind of like Boulder Dash a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not really sure how the game plays or how in-depth it goes or whatever, but definitely looks good and well-made.
Yeah.
Judging from the script, there's an Asian influence here, so that may be why this was happening without us knowing about it. So somehow some MC-10 user in somewhere in Asia and just out of contact. So if that's you, I'd love for you to reach out and sure. Tell us about yourself and all that. I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, definitely. That's very impressive. Another game that's definitely worth checking out on the MC-10. All right, next news article is from Jamie Lentino at PCMag.com. This is kind of cool. It's Growing Up Gamer in the Kingdom of Daventry. So it's an article here written on, Jamie's revisiting playing one of the earliest animated adventure games, which is King's Quest, and with his daughter. It's a cool read if you want to check it out.
Yep, very cool. Nice to see some coverage of the old ways, shall I?
Oh, yeah, I mean, we grew up with these games. Followed by that, leads right into it. This is really cool. It's an article from Darren Draven at The Gamer, and it's titled 10 Ways Sierra Online Changed Video Gaming Forever. And this is it's really cool. It talks about all different advancements they had in their games and pushing the barrier. It's a really good read. I was a big fan of Sierra games back in the day. I mean, I still like them. Speaking of that, I do want to thank you, John, for pointing me in that Sierra group on Facebook, too. That's I like reading a lot of that stuff in there. And then follow my last one here in this section. This is definitely a Sierra grouping here. A YouTube video by Metal Jesus Rocks at YouTube. And it's titled Behind the Scenes with Sierra Online's Al Lowe, which is the man behind Leisure Suit Larry. And he's done work on some other games, too, like King's Quest. So that's a nice interview, if you want a half-an-hour interview there with Al Lowe.
All right, we've got another one here from Mr. Jim Gary. It's Peeper by David Wilkins. It's a cool-looking game. This is kind of what I call it, Space Invaders meets Hollywood Squares. Interesting gameplay. You know, it's got a bunch of windows and columns and rows, so you have to kind of line up where you're going to shoot, but then you have to say what floor you want to shoot at. You'd hit 1 to shoot at floor 1 or 3 to shoot at floor 3, so it adds kind of an interesting additional element for challenge. So, yeah, cool looking game. Looks like it runs pretty smoothly, so thanks for that, Jim. And our next one is from Matthew Hughes at Wired. It's Retro Collectors Are Uncovering Hordes of Old Data, and not in a good way. This article is talking about finding data that's been left on old retro systems. So you may be spinning up a Macintosh from 20 years ago to find all kinds of personal data. I think in the article, one was talking about one that belonged to a dermatologist and had all kinds of dates and times and names and procedures and things like this. So some sensitive information. On retro computers, this is, especially as soon as the hard drive came out, I think most of us here probably would either use a utility to wipe a drive or, even destroy it or remove it before selling it or whatever. But it's a good cautionary article to read about and make you think about what you might have on a drive before you let it back into the wild, as it were.
I would think that the type of information, like you said, health data related to practice, a dental practice, or a physician, not a dental practice, but a physician's practice might be the kind of data that you would have to look for on older systems like that. But what's interesting is that today on a phone, there's a lot more compromat material that you can find than you could on the old retro computers, specifically given the proliferation of cameras and things like that. So.
It still reminds me, there's a meme I see once in a while pop up. This like shows like a box of VHS tapes with like handwritten stuff on the labels or whatever, and it says, like I forget exactly what it says, but something like family movie night. Which one do you risk popping in the VCR with kids around?
All right, our next article here, we have links to 6 new AGD game packs from Pear Surratt. We're seeing a consistent release of these converted games. So,
yeah, amazingly so.
Yeah, we're swimming in new games for the CoCo. So if you're looking for some new things to check out, definitely follow these links. Yeah, it's just amazing that they keep cranking these out. We're up to pack number 47 now. So
I know.
that's awesome. Thanks for that, Pear.
Welcome to Computers R Us. How can I help you?
I'm looking for a color computer.
Here's what you want. This is kind of like a color computer. It has color and sound. Oh, and look at these big fat function keys.
Well, I was looking more for...
Well, we're running a special on serial diskette drives. It can load games in just 90 seconds.
No, I'm really looking for a Tandy color computer.
Oh, this is kind of like a color computer. The keyboard is a little smaller, but it can sound just like a C&C.
Do you service what you sell?
Kinda. We have a 1-800 number.
Thanks, but I'm heading to Radio Shack.
Service, support, technology. Tandy is clearly superior. Don't settle for kinda. Genuine Tandy computers and peripherals are available exclusively at Radio Shack and Radio Shack Computer Centers. Compare.
you too will immediately recognize Tandy technology, service, and support are clearly superior.
Does your color computer know what time it is? Well, now it can with the RTC10 real-time clock. The RTC10 is a quartz-based time-date clock contained in a compact ROM case. The included 2-year-plus replaceable battery keeps time accurate when the computer is off and even when the cartridge is unplugged. It can be used with or without a multi-slot unit. The included software allows you to set the clock as well as display time and date in the upper right corner of the video screen. The RTC10 makes it simple to access the time and date with just a few basic peaks. It's compatible with any 16K or greater extended or non-extended color computer. The RTC10 comes completely assembled, tested, and ready to plug in and use. The RTC10 real-time clock. Only $89 from Custom Computer Products. Goshen, New York.
This next one is from Ken Sheriff. It's reverse engineering the Yamaha DX7 synthesizer sound chip from dye photos. Interesting article on taking a look at what's inside of a DX7's synthesizer chip. DX7 was a very popular synthesizer in the 80s. It was pretty ubiquitous. You can still find them. It's probably one of the most common synthesizers that's out there now. It was really a cutting-edge, lightweight, capable keyboard for its time. But the article is really about, reverse engineering the hardware. And of course, this is the story is kind of relevant to what is being attempted now with the Gimme chip. Definitely interesting reading. Not something I plan to get into doing myself in the near future.
Yeah, a little in-depth. But yeah, and that's like you said, apropos with to do the same kind of work on the Gimme. So if you didn't already have a feel for kind of what's involved and what's really happening, then maybe this will help enlighten you some. Big project. I don't know scale-wise. I'm not sure which is the bigger job versus the synthesizer versus the Gimme, but either way, a lot of work and a lot of in-depth inspection of of images, whatever. So.
The next news item is Logger by Brian Jenkins from 1984. This looks like a port of a game by a good friend of the show, Mr. Jim Gary. This looks like a basic game that uses the graphics modes on the MC10, although it says here on the comments, it says another from TRS-80 Color Computer Fantastic Game. So this is something apparently published in an older book or something. It looks like a cross between, well, it looks like Donkey Kong, actually, is what it seems to me to be, a simplistic version of Donkey Kong. The little character that runs up the ladders is actually composed of alphanumeric characters. It looks like it's pretty ingenious way of doing it. And it looks like a huge rooster at the top throwing out at signs. Is that right?
Those are the logs rolling down.
Yeah.
So you're looking at this like the at signs, the side view of the log. Yeah.
And what is the significance of the rooster or whatever that is?
Well, the bird has a hatchet that he's stolen from you, and that's what you're trying to do is get to the top and get to the hatchet.
A pretty cool game.
Yeah.
Very cool.
All right. The next news item is Programming in 1987 versus Today by Curtis Poe. I read this earlier when I saw it online. It's a bit of a commentary on programming in BASIC on a CoCo, in fact. It's what he indicates, a CoCo 2, and kind of goes through some sample code and then even talks about Perl code there at the end. So kind of a philosophical commentary, I would say.
Some philosophical or whatever stuff, but also the ultimate thing he's trying to do, parse, hit the skeleton with a sword, take his ring, and then walk north and touch the altar. Which is kind of a ridiculously long sentence to put into an adventure game, but so the notion of writing a parser for something like that, I think probably a bunch of us at one point or another thought, well, I can write some kind of text adventure, and how do I parse these strings or whatever. I might not be too averse to it these days with, a career's worth of programming experience behind me, but when I was 10 years old, I didn't have any idea how to process that, trying to figure it out for myself. So you see my name on any adventure game, so it'll tell you how far I got it. Anyway, kind of cool.
Yep, good article. The next news item is The High Cost of Software in the 1980s by Rob Griffiths. This was an interesting article. You wouldn't think that software back then was expensive, but he gives a listing of a number of examples out of ads in a magazine just to show you how expensive in today's dollars software was. He talks about Broderbund software having a payroll and a general ledger program that was $395 back in the day, and how much it would be today. It's pretty remarkable.
It's something we tell ourselves a lot, or I hear people say in retro geek such a lot of times, is the games today is basically cost the same as they always have, about $40 or $50 for I don't know, whatever they're buying, but and that sort of there's that $40 or $50 price tag that has sort of remained constant, but and even though inflation, at least until the past year, hasn't been a big thing since the early 80s, perhaps, it still has existed, and it does add up over time. And you apply some of these consumer price index or whatever inflation values against some of these things, and paying $40 today versus paying $40 in 1983 actually is a big difference in the amount of spending power. Kind of amazing how much we were spending back then, and it's sort of no wonder all the kids were pirating software. There's no way we could have bought it otherwise.
Yeah, that's true. You bring up a good point about inflation today. You might have to update this article next month the way things are going.
Yeah, no doubt.
The next news item is Tandy Radio Shack computer cassette recorders, TRS-CCR by VoidStar. This is a link to an article that is chronicling the Tandy computer cassette recorders that were made and sold through Radio Shack. I see 4 of them. Of course, I owned the CCR81. It was my very first tape recorder that I got with my CoCo 2 when I got my CoCo 2 in 1985. So this certainly brings back memories for me. It also goes over things like belt repair notes and things like that. So a pretty good resource, it looks like.
Yeah, it's pretty neat to goes in on that, and a lot of details, and kind of cool when somebody goes in on the variations on a product or whatever, explain why you might want one versus the other, or that sort of. Pretty cool.
Yep, good information, good historical.
Nice to see the attention. Yep.
All right, the next news item is block down live video footage running on real CoCo hardware by Mr. Neil Blanchard. This is a Facebook post by none other than Neil, who is going over blockdown. Neil, you're on, so why don't you talk about this?
Yeah, I decided to create a video because I had a lot of requests that people wanted to actually see the game running. So I figured, well, what better way to do it? Run it on some real CoCo hardware. They can see the graphics and hear the audio playing, which is nice, off the GMC.
The next news item is Star Swoop for the Dragon. It uses semi-graphic mode 8 and has nice graphics and animations. I patched it to run with this basic and the CoCo keyboard layout by Mr. Major. This is a pretty good looking game just based on the screenshots. I love just the title screen itself. Very creative, colorful title. I presume this is written in assembly language. I haven't played it. I don't know, but it looks like it would be in an assembly language game. And I don't know how old it is. Is it back from the 80s or what its vintage is, but it looks like a cool game. The next news item is Replacement Membrane Project Update by Mr. Mike Rojas. This is an update on Facebook. Mike is posting some pictures with looks like the CoCo 1 keyboard. No, it's CoCo 3 actually, sorry. Wow, he's even showing some pictures of switches and 3D printed some of this stuff. Not sure, but he's really getting into it. Looks like a pretty detailed post here. Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, pretty amazing work.
Certainly something we need, because I've got several keyboards that are dead because the Mylars are just shot. You get the conductive material starts flaking off, and the next thing you know, heroic keys don't work, or it's a mess. So, good work. Right, the next news item is, Why Do Retro Games Look Better on Old TVs by Jake Peterson at Lifehacker. I read this quickly, scanning through it. There is some truth to this. I don't know if it's a nostalgia factor because, we all grew up playing on a real TV as opposed to LCD monitors and the plethora of choices we have today to do video conversions on the CoCo and others. But could be just like he says, the scan lines. The scan lines give retro games a distinctive look. That's certainly true, It's kind of just a magic of watching the game on an old CRT that just makes it look like it belonged there. So I really enjoyed this article.
You see, articles are sort of the same conclusion or whatever, but I figured I'd throw it in. It can't get too much coverage, I guess, right?
Yeah. Good stuff.
All right, we have another one from friend of the show, Mr. Jim Gary. It's Apple Integer Basic Chess that's been converted to run on the MC10. The next two links are actually about this. This is an interesting chess program. It was written in BASIC, which is fascinating in its own right. And of course, all the pieces, they're not graphic pieces. They're represented with letters, which can make it challenging to play. If you're a person who's into chess, you probably enjoy this. One of the features is apparently, because you enter your moves in column and row format from and to. Apparently, it lets you make illegal moves, so you can cheat if you want to. So if you're lousy at chess, you may enjoy that very much. Interesting that you could fit a chess program, a basic chess program, into that small amount of memory. So pretty cool. Check it out. All right, we have one from Anna Nowagrodsky. It is old school computing when your lab PC is ancient. I like this article very much because you definitely should read this, because there's a lot of specialized computer equipment in the science community, the military community. And I guess, for lack of a better word, you could say there are certain systems that are bespoke for specific purposes. So, like to control telescopes or satellites, and they have a very long lifespan. Medical equipment, very specialized kind of equipment. And some of these things have been running for 50 years and will probably keep running. So different kind of spin on retro computing, because these are still running. So interesting article.
People end up retro computing by accident, I guess, but out of necessity. It's kind of cool.
Not even realizing they're doing it.
There are many great word processors for the color computer, but there's only one that gives you the simplicity of a point-and-click interface. It's Max 10 from Colorware. Max 10 is a true WYSIWYG word processor. WYSIWYG means what you see is what you get. What you see on your screen is what you will see on your printer. Combine multiple fonts, incorporate pictures into your documents. Format in columns, making newsletters a joy to work with. Max 10 is so easy it's almost completely intuitive. Max 10 from Colorware, the word processing program you've been waiting for.
It looks good for OS 9. We're coming forward with the config command. It all looks good.
Roger, CHX2/D0/commands.
I've got a blowout in the CoCo 3. Reseat the Gibby. It's no good. I've got garbage on the screen.
Correction. Cycle power for 30 seconds.
Both disk lights are on. She's breaking up.
The Color Computer, 6809, a computer barely alive. Gentlemen, we can rebuild it. We have the technology. We have the capability to make the world's first advanced color computer. The CoCo 4 will be that computer. Better than it was before. Better, stronger, faster.
All right, our next one is from Stephen Cass at IEEE Spectrum. 10 gifts for retro computing fans. This link is kind of a rundown of some kits that are available, new kits are available for that are retro computers. So, Z80 bus computers and PDP kits, and it's worth a look to see some of the things that are available out there. We need to get some more 6809 kits out there, though.
Definitely.
Yes.
Well, it's up to Boise and his pals to get more 6809 CPUs out in the world.
Yeah, it definitely has some good possibilities. So
we're working on it.
We're watching that with bated breath. Okay, we have an article from Sarah Wells at Inverse. 54 years ago, a computer programmer fixed a massive bug and created an existential crisis. This article is all about the history of the blinking cursor.
Yeah. The title's a little breathless, I think, but
yeah,
still an interesting article. The next link is really two links from Robert Sieg. Robert pops up from time to time, generally in the MC10 side of the house. A lot of his work involves full screen project, he calls it. Basically, it's you can turn on the graphics modes on the 6847 and then in the MC10 that take up that actually use more memory than is available in the MC10, and so you get kind of a reflection pattern between the top and the bottom of the screen. And if you're clever, you can make use of that and make it look like you're using the whole screen when you're really only using 2/3 of the screen. And because you mirror the top to the bottom or whatever. He's posted first a video, the MC10 MCX, so this is combining with the MC128, which is the Darren Atkinson designed update or expansion for the MC10. It adds some enhancements to BASIC and some memory upgrade as well. But let's see, he's done something here. So I don't know what this Game Boy editor is. I didn't dig too deeply, but it looks like it's something that's designed for doing graphics for the Game Boy, and that he's somehow adapted the output to be useful for an MC10 program. And so he's showing a Berserk-inspired game running on the MC10 and using graphics that's created on this Game Boy editor. So pretty cool. I always like to see people figure out how to make use of tools that already exist rather than having to write new ones. I don't know how much effort it's to adapt or whatever comes out of it. It certainly looks like the options on the screen that are showing for that Game Boy editor are mentioning things like CSS and CG color graphics versus RG monographics and SG6. So somebody's done some adaptation to the MC10 and or the 6847 style graphics hardware. I don't know. I'd love to see somebody do it around that. If anybody knows more information about that, or Robert, if you're listening, feel free to contact us with more information on this using the Game Boy editor for the MC10. I'd like to learn more about that. So there's a second link below that, which points to a Facebook post from Robert. It says, in regard to the full screen project, I was realizing I would need an easy-to-use art program to make that Game Boy application compatible instead of making the application myself. So I guess Robert's done this editor there. Possible to load Game Boy application, TASM, or bin output directly into the FSP. So that's a full screen project. Anyway, so he's been doing some tool-related work for the MC10. A lot of it ties into this full screen project, so this high-res mode on the MC10. So, I mean, it's interesting work. I don't quite understand all of what's going on. Haven't found a lot of write-up on it, so I've kind of gleaned it from seeing a few posts here and there. But hopefully that does it justice. There you go. So, moving on from there, we've got the next link. I guess the next couple of them come from Jim Gary. He's got a game called Pooper. I'm not really sure what that's about, although I kind of fear what it might be about. But,
it's about picking up
so
after your dog.
Yeah.
Based on a game for the Sinclair ZXQ1 by Dr. Beep. This version is in Microcolor Basic for the TRS-80 MC10. He's got a link to the original if you want to find that. So, okay, so another Jim Gary game. Looks pretty cool. Clever use of the alphanumeric characters. Fine. So, but then there's another link that is a pooper using Robert Sieg's FSP. So you see why they're all tucked in here together. So this is a version of my 10-liner basic game Pooper running under Robert Sieg's full screen project. His little high-res dog character poops in the park cleaner armed with a deadly spade. Anyway, so there it ties in. So it's got some cooperation going on in the MC10 world. So you've got the full screen project and some graphics tooling or whatever, and then there's a game from Gary, of course there is. He's going to be able to put them together into some useful work. So very cool. So good to see that creation, and nice to have another. So very cool. All right, so the next link is from Canadian Retro Things at YouTube. The title is Basic 09 Part 1, Some of What is Possible. It's kind of an introductory video talking about using programming in the Basic 09 language, of course, on top of Nitrous 9. I'm sure it's a good introduction, and if you've never looked much at Basic 09, it's probably a good thing to consider, especially if you enjoy recreational programming under OS 9 or on your CoCo in general. Then it's something to look at and evaluate and check out. And then, of course, we have a second video, also from Canadian Retro Things, Basic 09 Part 2, Commands for the System and Edit Modes. So, again, more introductory stuff for Basic 09. So, moving on to Mr. James Jones. You can't mention Basic 09 and get very far in the modern CoCo community without bumping into James Jones. James, of course, was a compiler person, worked at Microware, very intellectual computer science kind of person, and who seems to have a great love for Basic 09 in particular. I think in response to the videos from Canadian Retro Things, he does a couple of videos here. He says, we start with the 8 queens problem. How many ways can you arrange 8 queens on the board so that none attack any of the others? I think it's kind of a classic problem in computer science, of intellectual challenge, that sort of thing, whatever. Then he also has a couple other videos directly related. As the second Basic 09 versus Color Basic video looks at what Rosetta Code calls the Count the Coins problem. So another kind of intellectual exercise in Basic 09. And not exactly in the same series, but sort of in the same time period. Picked up another link from Mr. Jones here. It says, here's source for Basic 09 code that does what the program on page 432 of Hal Chamberlain's Musical Applications of Microcomputers does. So if you've ever been browsing musical applications of microcomputers and hit page 432 and wondered, well, what does this program do? James here has the solution for you. Oh, yeah, it says, okay, Facebook add file option does absolutely nothing. I'll try to upload them. So it's probably uploaded in the Facebook group. I'm sure you can find it if you're interested enough. And if you can't for some reason, feel free to reach out to me. Provide me a feedback on how terrible my links are, and I'll try to figure out where the file is and help you find it. So, fair enough? I hope so. Anyway, thank you, James, for your collection of videos and insights and that sort of thing.
Got a Facebook post from Jason Oakley titled, I've been helping out adding support for my platform to a programming system called Turbo Rascal Syntax Error.
Yeah, so looking for people who know some 6809 and are interested in helping out with the weirdly named Rascal syntax error. Anyway, it's kind of neat, kind of Pascal-like programming language designed for retro computers. If you know something about the CoCo and 6809 and are interested in helping out on a programming language development system, it looks like they're calling for help. And if you want to know more what about Turbo Rascal is, then that's the next link there, and the one by Lewin Day at Hackaday.
All right, next news article here is it's a YouTube video, AC's 8-Bit Zone. It's actually a multi-video here, but looks like the bulk of it here is convert old IBM PC Junior joysticks to the Tandy CoCo Deluxe style. Those are the joysticks that actually look identical to the CoCo ones. This video shows how to wire them to work on your CoCo. And it would also work on the Tandy 1000 as well. That's useful.
Yeah, pretty cool. I mean, they definitely made the craft-made
yeah, definitely
cheesy joysticks.
Yeah, that was it. That was the brand. Yeah, I couldn't think of the name.
Craft, yeah.
Yeah. Seems to be quite a few out there.
It's not going to be a matter of just replacing the cable end. You're going to have to actually do a little rewiring, not major, but a little bit of rewiring inside the joystick. But it should be relatively simple to do. So, good project.
Good to know. Yeah, especially if you have a few of those joysticks laying around.
Once in a while, you'll see somebody who's got a bunch for sale. They're probably the kind of was made by the millions, if not at least hundreds of thousands, and somewhere somebody's got a few in a warehouse that they'll be able to sell you for $4 a piece or something like that. So,
right.
If you luck upon that, then you know what to do.
All right, next news article here, moving along, is from Simon Jonason, the Mad Coder, and he has coded a Super Sprite YM player. That's to run on the Super Sprite board with an MPI, of course, in slot number 1. It says it's very simple for now. It does sound great. I have listened to it. The harmonics are really nice on it. And then it looks like he's got a follow-up video. Simon's got another one here titled, "Okay, finally getting a handle on the VDP on the Super Sprite board." That's cool to see he's doing some work with that.
Yep, very nice.
Yep. All right, and finishing off the news section here is another one from a friend of the show, Jim Gary. Galactic Hitchhiker. You got another MC10 game. This is a text adventure. It's pretty fun.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool.
Yep. Well, we had to have one more from Jim Gary, right?
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Well, that comes to the end of our news segment. So we'll take a short break, and then we'll be back with feedback.
Remember when we used to play computer games with cheap plastic joysticks? Our fingers would ache for days.
Put the past behind you. Introducing the Gamester. The Gamester is the ultimate 2-button joystick controller for your color computer, Dragon, and Tandy 1000. The Gamester features a genuine arcade-quality joystick with 2 large arcade-quality cherry switch buttons on a single surface. Best of all, the hardware is mounted in a sturdy wooden cabinet. It sits comfortably on your lap or on your desk. Experience the difference that super high-quality, heavy-duty components make in your gameplay. No more finger fatigue. Responsive button switches. Sturdy components that can take the punishment of even the most enthusiastic player. Every Gamester is built to order. Choose the wood for your cabinet. Choose custom paint or stain and finishes. Select the cable length for your Gamester. Choose a left-handed configuration, or add adapters for your Dragon computer. The Gamester is designed to last a lifetime. To build yours, simply reach out to Neil Blanchard by email. Neil@cococrew.org. That's NEIL@COCOCREW.org. Experience genuine arcade controller action for all of your favorite color computer, Dragon, and Tandy 1000 computer games. For true arcade action, it's the Gamester.
This month in CoCo history.
Welcome to This Month in CoCo History, where we explore events in the life of our favorite home computer. I'm Boise Pete, and this month we take a step back 38 years to the January 1984 issue of Hot Cocoa and a unique peripheral. On page 75 of that issue is a full-page advertisement from JNOR Industries with the title, quote, "Expand Your Color Computer," end quote. The ad touts the User 80C, or User Selectable Expansion Requirements 80C, as an expansion interface for the color computer, quote, "designed with the user in mind," end quote, for $249.95. This 6-slot expansion device is shown in 2 photos, one directly attached to the side of a color computer and another with just the device itself in view. According to the ad, any of the 6 slots of the User 80C is selectable with either a push-button key affixed to the top of the box or through programming. The plethora of slots available allows the connection of a disk controller, ROM or RAM cartridge, EEPROM board, or any other color computer peripheral. The User 80C utilizes its own reset button and has its own on-off switch with an LED indicator. It also has gold inlay connector contacts for more reliable operation and an externally located switching power supply that provides power to the unit. The ad also promises, quote, "more to come," end quote, such as analog-digital converters, parallel ports for printers, cassette recorders, joysticks, and even a 4-channel scope. It's unclear if JNOR Industries delivered on such ambitious product goals, but its User 80C certainly gave the 4-slot multi-pack from Tandy a run for its money.
And that's this month in CoCo history.
For versatile, powerful word processing on the CoCo 3, look no further than WordPower 3. Written in 100% machine language, no other word processor offers the speed, power, or flexibility of WordPower 3. Editing is effortless with WordPower 3. Access the help screen anytime. Features include split-screen editing, mail merge, on-screen 2-column print, spell checker, punctuation checker, and a built-in 4-function calculator accessible while you edit. Printing is a breeze with WordPower 3's built-in print spooler. No more waiting on your printer. Print a large job while you work on another. WordPower 3 provides for up to 72K of text on a 128K system and over 450K of text on a 512K system. That's more text than any other CoCo 3 word processor. WordPower includes a quick reference card and full instruction manual for just $79.95. Step up to the power and versatility of professional CoCo 3 word processing software. Step up to WordPower 3 from Microcom Software.
Welcome back, CoCo Crews. Now it's time for our little section of feedback. All right, the first couple here are in reference to host discussion topic from, I guess it was last month. Sometimes they blend together or slip away. But basically on when is it okay to go ahead and proceed to do a project that somebody else has kind of claimed or whatever, but you want to do it or need to do it, or, you know, that's the gist of it anyway. So we got a comment back from Mr. James Diffendaffer. So in his comment, kind of the core of it at least, it says, it would be nice if the person were to at least ask the original author out of courtesy. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. And of course, this couldn't help but be reminded of having touched on this basic topic, I guess, in the past. And that was essentially what I thought we said, and seemed to be rather controversial a couple of years ago. Maybe living through the COVID era or whatever has mellowed some of us out. I'm not sure. I'm not singling James out. I don't remember him being too much of a part of that other row. But, whatever. Hopefully, at least the adult position here is let's be nice and courteous to each other and don't be jerks. Hopefully that wins out. Anyway, thanks for the comments, James. I'm sure they were well intended. Let's see. Next one comes from Mr. Greg Miller. Don't hear a lot out of Greg. Once in a while he pops up. He did a cycle-accurate VHDL implementation of the 6809 a while back. So this guy, he has some cred, shall we say. Anyway, talking in general about, people potentially stepping on each other's toes or taking each other's projects or whatever. So he says, a few situations that I ended up grumpy about were when I mentioned it to someone and they ended up doing it, apparently recognizing that it was a good idea. As a result, I try not to talk about what I'm working on at any given time, aside from a small group of trusted folks. Which I totally understand, Greg, although, and I guess I would thank you for pointing out that this, a real-life example, shall we say, or at least a real-life anecdote, that I'm not the only one who thinks this happens. I think it's kind of sad that we have to sort of hide our projects from one another a little bit, or at least our potential project, because of that exact reason. But I guess such is life. At least such is life in the CoCo world. Thank you, Greg, for acknowledging that that's a concern, folks. And I don't know what we do with it or about it, but it's good to at least acknowledge it.
That's right.
Anyway, moving on from that topic, next little feedback item comes from Mr. Brian Weasler. He says, I really like Mike's commercial he did for the CoCo Cool. That commercial inspired me to start looking for one to add to my collection. I believe, if I recall, I saw some pictures that Brian did find one for his collection. So, cool. So that's cool, literally. And so Mike jogged his memory or whatever, and he found another little artifact for his collection that's interesting, practical, useful in certain ways. Probably not as practical or useful these days because most of us probably don't run them for hours and heat them up as much as we used to. Certainly would have been a cool item to have back in the day when I was actually overheating my Koko from time to time. Anyway, but cool. Good to hear from you, Brian. I'm not intentionally saying cool over and over, but it's kind of cool that I can make that cool reference. Anyway. That's all the feedback that we have at this time. So why don't we call an end to this segment, and then we'll be back with the rest of the show.
So what did you want to show me?
Check this out. I do this poke, and the printer is now at 9600.
Yeah, that's a popular one.
And I wrote this little program to do all these pokes to give me access to 40-track drives.
Yeah?
And this one lets me access both sides of the drive.
Okay.
And this utility automatically creates line numbers for me in BASIC.
You do know that all these things are built into ADOS, don't you?
Huh?
Have you been living in a cave somewhere? ADOS adds all sorts of cool functions to your color computer. All the things you described and more. It even supports true lowercase on the new CoCo 2s.
You're kidding me.
ADOS adds things like repeat keys so you can edit your last command, DOS command for OS 9, error trapping in BASIC, there's a RAM command to run in full RAM mode, 2-column disk directories, keyword abbreviation, and that doesn't even scratch the surface of the features of ADOS.
That sounds easier than all these pokes and short utility programs.
You better believe it. And ADOS comes with an easy-to-use configuration program. You just run it, enable the things you want, ignore what you don't want.
That sounds great.
You can run ADOS from disk, or you can have ADOS create a ROM image, and you can just burn that onto a ROM and put it on your disk controller, so it boots up right into ADOS every time you boot your CoCo. Imagine, you never have to set your baud rate again.
Wow, that's amazing. Will it work with my CoCo 1?
ADOS works with both CoCo 1 and CoCo 2 systems, and it's available for just $27.95. You'll wonder how you ever lived without it. Supercharge your color computer with ADOS from Spectro Systems. Spectro Systems, Miami, Florida.
All right, CoCo Cruisers, welcome back. We're going to have a little host discussion amongst the hosts. In our prep talks, or as we're getting ready to do the podcast, we were talking a little bit about, kind of outrageously priced things that have popped up on eBay, especially those of us who've been around long enough to remember when, if you heard somebody had some CoCo stuff, you basically would just call them to ask when you could back your truck up to their house, and they'd throw all the stuff in the back.
That's true.
Nowadays, that's a little less likely. There are, like I said, there've been some multi-$100 listings on eBay recently for CoCo systems, not just CoCo 3. I don't know if they're selling or not. They're worth a lot more, or at least the bundles with a floppy drive or whatever. These days, I'm not sure how serious a collector you have to be. Does adding a floppy drive even make a system more valuable these days, or does it make it less valuable? There for a while, it seemed like the system with a floppy drive was almost less valuable because it just meant it was heavier. What do you think is happening with the CoCo market or retro stuff in general? I mean, we are at a point. I don't know if we're quite to an inflection point, but for example, I turned 50 a couple of months ago. I'm not super young, but I'm not by any means the oldest person in the community. So the community's getting plenty of gray hair. What happens to the market as some of us are participating in the market, shall we say? I don't know. What do we expect to happen to our retro markets, particularly the CoCo market, over the next, say, 5 years?
I don't know if it's going to crash. I also don't think there's, a lot of people collecting this stuff, they're not that old either, so I don't know what their plans are. They probably haven't thought about, if something happens to them, what their spouse is going to do with it. That's a good question, but I don't think a lot of people have thought that far ahead.
Yeah. Well, should we? I mean, we probably should.
Oh, for sure.
I know in my high school class, seemed like every year we add, it used to be we'd add one person, maybe two, and it seemed like the past year we added like 5 or 6, and they weren't COVID either. Oh, maybe, like I said, I've turned 50. Maybe 50's old enough to start worrying about that stuff. And I'm sure there's plenty of people that I know in the CoCo world that are 60s and even 70s. That's not necessarily drop dead age, but it would not exactly a shock if it happens either. You know what I mean? I don't know. What about also stuff has gotten rarer and more popular over the past few years, has driven the prices up. But we've been hearing about record inflation in the real world, shall we say. And when it starts to cost $10 a pound to have hamburgers, does that make you less likely to want to buy an MPI or a CoCo SDC when it's harder to find, milk on the shelves or whatever?
I'm going to quote a 90s phenomenon on TV, Susan Powder. Stop the insanity. The prices on eBay are nuts. Not all of them, but for the most part, what I'm seeing on CoCo 3s is just, I don't know, I can't believe they're selling. As I said earlier in the segment, or in another segment in the show, that I saw a CoCo 3, I think with a cassette recorder and a floppy drive for almost $1,300 on eBay with like $125 to ship or something like that. I just don't see how that can be sustained. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are more heavy-hitter collectors coming to the CoCo community because, frankly, by and large, what I've seen at CoCo Fest, CoCo people are typically cheap and don't have the kind of luxury to spend that kind of money. So maybe there's more entrants into the market that have more disposable income. Maybe it's a combination of that and inflation, but I just think it's unsustainable in the long run.
eBay is a marketplace, so you just let the market do its thing. I doubt people are going to be, if people start buying CoCos for $1,200 on a regular basis, a lot of us are going to start selling them. Right?
Yeah, that's true.
So if the demand is high and the supply is low, then that'll determine the price. But probably what usually happens, and of course we've all made fun of the New York Times CoCo 2 that's been out there for $2.99 for years, and it's still there. So
yeah, I agree with your argument about market forces. I just think that some people the price is so ludicrous that maybe they'll sell it, but maybe they won't. I don't sit there and watch to see if they eventually sell them, but I just want to shake them and say, wake up.
Something else I'll add with eBay. I particularly, if I sell on eBay, I don't want to sit on the item. Like the whole point is I want to sell it. I want to move it out fast. So what I always do is I look at completed listings, like sold listings, because you're going to get those dreamers, that are, like that New York Times CoCo that you just mentioned. I don't want stuff to be there for a couple of years. So I want it gone in a couple of weeks, couple of days. So I just look at completed listings. I get an idea of what it's worth. if I don't know what it's worth, and then it seems to move pretty fast that way.
Well, the New York Times CoCo isn't looking so expensive anymore these days.
That's true.
That's the sad part.
Yeah.
It's like holding on to a stock. If you hold it long enough,
Exactly.
you actually get a good price for it.
So one thing that I've kind of noticed, you're seeing more, people with random YouTube videos, and they'll pop up and say, hey, I got this TRS-80 Color Computer 2. Let's look at what's inside. And first thing to do, they open it up, and it only has 16K. I'm going to upgrade it to 64K. Then I'm going to look and see what kind of software I can run on it. Or, something like it's basically obvious that the person is not really a CoCo person. They're more like a generic retro, even maybe not even a generic retro collector, more like a opportunist or whatever that's just picked something up and decided to do a project on it. And I don't know what's, I would presume that this podcast is part of the overall zeitgeist that has enabled that to happen. Obviously, there's other podcasts or other YouTube shows out there that are driving some amount of enthusiasm. But I guess the question is, is there some sort of CoCo popularity wave that is breaking around us that is making this somehow more popular to pick up a CoCo and upgrade to extended color basic and put in 64K and then figure out what to do with it, if anything? I'm sure you're seeing evidence of that.
Oh yeah, the videos you just mentioned. I see people who, when you used to see videos on YouTube of people doing stuff with the CoCo, it was somebody who you knew in the community or was somewhat familiar, passively familiar, I guess, in the CoCo community. Now you're seeing people who are like, who's this guy? Who's this, person? Just people out of the blue investigating a CoCo like they've never seen it before, like they're looking at some, fish bones in a rock or something. So yeah, I see it all the time.
Yeah.
More and more.
I'm not sure I understand that mindset, honestly. I mean, I probably have picked up some random device or another and then found out just enough about it to figure out to upgrade the memory or something like that. But, honestly, just don't mess with those machines that much. I guess I don't quite get why would you want to pick up something you know nothing about and then learn just enough to upgrade it and then still do nothing with it or whatever? There's no doubt I'm creating haters amongst a certain group at this point saying that, but
the Hordes.
I'm not sure. I don't really understand the mindset.
Well, I think that is maybe driving some of this price that we're seeing, this price increase and these crazy prices, is the perceived novelty and rarity of these computers. Now, getting back to that CoCo 3 that I mentioned for $1,200 and some bucks that I saw on eBay, it did have a floppy drive with it, like I said, an FD502, and I think the listing said that it was unopened in the box. And obviously, when you get a CoCo 3 that's quote-unquote brand new in the box, and I'm sure there's some out there, I've got a few myself, that you're going to be able to fetch, command a pretty good price. And I think the disk drive was the same, in the same shape. But even so, I'm seeing open box or just CoCo 3s without a box being put on eBay sometimes for $600-700.
Wow.
So, crazy. And I think you're right, John. I think some of that is driven by the fringe elements coming into the community or, experimenting or poking around what is a CoCo and then seeing that and thinking, hey, I've got one of these, let me try to make a quick buck on
it. Yeah, so are we beating the drum too hard? Or bringing in too many people? Yeah, I don't know. But, yeah, I'm sure we can't really fix it. We'll just probably try to wait it out.
Yeah.
I remember early on in this podcast, roughly the time frame, I think it was you boys that had sort of declared that $300 was going to be the price for a CoCo 3 before long. And, kind of poo-pooed you a little bit, and it didn't happen immediately, but it didn't really take that long either before it was $300 for CoCo 3s regularly.
Yeah.
And I think I picked up one since then that was, I was excited to get. I got one for $200 or something like that, but they are pricier than that these days. I don't think we're selling a lot at $1,200, honestly, but I hope not. I guess it's good for the people who have them, but I kind of would prefer to keep a more sane price on those. I don't know what's happening in, say, the Apple II community or the Commodore community. I'm not sure if they're having any big price spikes, but, well, I don't know. It's hard to know. And even if they were, it wouldn't necessarily translate to us. But
I remember that. I remember making that pronouncement some years ago. And obviously the price went right through my ceiling. So, yeah, we're past the $300 CoCo 3 now.
Well, that's why everyone should love the CoCo 1. A great machine.
I like it.
A lot of socketed parts on the motherboard. It can do 12 volts out the cartridge port. What more can you ask for? It's a great machine.
Yep.
So buy up CoCo 1s.
A lot of the parts in there is off the shelf.
Yep. Well, I doubt if we've swung the market to CoCo 1s, but we tried.
Suddenly they go up.
That would be kind of funny. Anyway, so if we've made you angry, I'm sure somebody out there is angry over something we've said. Feel free to let us know. Feedback, FEEDBACK, at CoCoCrew.org, and let us know what you're thinking. And, of course, if you're that person that said they were tired of hearing me spell on the podcast, you feel free to send us a note about that, too. All right. Is that the end of the discussion? Is there anything else to add? All right. Well, why don't we draw this to a close and probably hit you with another segment or two. And so with that, enjoy the rest of the show.
AutoTerm turns your CoCo into the world's smartest terminal. Scroll text forward and backward. Save, load, and delete files while online. Full support for the RS-232 pack, X modem, and even split screen for packet radio. Screen widths of 32, 40, 42, 51, or 64, plus 80 column support for the CoCo 3. Switch instantly to word processing mode. Find strings instantly. Create text. Make corrections, save, or load files. Then upload them to a remote system. Fully compatible with Telewriter, plus full automation tools to automate dialing, keystroke, macros, uploading, and downloading. AutoTerm runs on the CoCo 2 and CoCo 3. No other computer can match your CoCo's intelligence as a terminal. AutoTerm from PXE Computing, Richardson, Texas.
1863. Confederate forces invade the northern states. Battle of Gettysburg. A tactical battle simulator that allows you to lead thousands of soldiers in the Battle of Gettysburg as commander of the Union Army. Your decisions and military performance play a crucial role in the result. Lead your army and win the Battle of Gettysburg. Rainbow Magazine says, this game provides the best feel of any tactical game for the color computer. Color Computer News says, win or lose, you will know you have been in a battle. Battle of Gettysburg requires 16K extended basic with joystick and cassette. Battle of Gettysburg from Soft Ride.
Greetings, CoCo Cruisers. Welcome to this month's tech segment. This is John Linville, and we're going to talk a bit about a little toy project that kind of came to me over Christmas break. Well, it's a joystick tester for the CoCo style joysticks, which of course covers the Tandy 1000 as well. Now I'm sure some of you are thinking, and some of you have even said, well, why bother? Or can't you just plug it into a CoCo and go from there? And it's pretty simple to do those things. Of course, you have to have a CoCo, a working CoCo, and it needs to be, plugged into a TV or something like that. Most people don't carry those things around. Not that I really expect people to carry this around either. But it's smart enough that they could do it. And, I don't know, it was kind of a goofy, it sounded like a kind of a goofy project to me originally. It's kind of spoofing it a little bit, and then suddenly it kind of occurred to me some things that could be done. So, hey, why not? And I broke out my KiCad, which is a convenient tool for doing PCB design, and started messing around, first with schematics, and then from the PCB from there. This printed circuit board, for those not in the know. Before long, I had something, and so then I sent off for basically a prototype run, about 5 boards, and got those back, and had a couple of issues with the boards. The footprints that I used for the resistors weren't really the right size, and a couple of issues along those lines, and made some modifications, sent off, and now I have the second revision of the boards. Hadn't put those together yet, but they're looking pretty good. So I thought it might be fun to talk a little bit about how this project works and what exactly it is, whatever. Yeah, so it's a printed circuit board that's designed for you to plug in a Tandy 1000 or CoCo style joystick and be able to evaluate the joystick in situ, so to speak, in the situation, and see if it actually works. It's not perfect. It's not going to give you exact results, but it gives you some good idea of whether or not the thing works. So, let's see. We basically have, looking at the diagram, the schematic diagram, I guess there's sort of 3 basic circuits involved here. And the first is was a power supply, no big deal. We will have a 9-volt battery in a holder on the PCB. So 9 volts are, it's enough power to be useful, and they're pretty easy to come by, and really easy if you need to replace one. Since there's just one battery, it pops out, pops in, whatever. And so that's pretty standard stuff. You got a 9-volt battery. It's got a switch, so you'll actually be able to turn it off without having to take the battery out or letting it wear down. I do have an indicator LED, so that when the switch is turned on, it'll energize the LED to give off a red light. And so, the LED is basically just from the positive rail of the input power supply to ground through a 10K resistor to limit the current, so they don't, blow up. They don't really blow up, but damage, they burn out. So that feeds straight into, there's, in parallel with that LED resistor combo, there's a, not super small, but a little capacitor at the input. Not sure how much you really need a capacitor at the input of the voltage regulator when you start with a DC battery. But looked around, it seems to be common practice at least, so why not? So it's about, I guess that one's 30.33 microfarads. It's a 7805 voltage regulator, pretty common stuff. 3-pin device, so that's the input side, then there's ground, then the output side. There's another capacitor at the output, that's a 0.1 microfarad. But the output, of course, is 5 volts, and which feeds out the rest of the circuit, including providing power going out to the joystick. This is the device under test. So, let's see, moving on. The others, it's very similar in some ways. It's similar to the power indicator. There's 2 lines for buttons to test. The joystick, the CoCo and Tandy 1000 joystick port has 2 buttons. Original ones only had 1 button when it was the 5-pin, and they added that 6-pin, the center pin is another button. So anyway, on both of those pins, so the buttons work if the joystick is just connect that pin to ground. And so the circuit on the circuit board here, we've got 2 LEDs, each one paired with a 10K resistor to limit current so they don't burn out. The anodes of the LEDs are both tied to +5, and then the cathode's tied to one end of those resistors, and the other end of each resistor then ties to one of the buttons connectors, or button pins on the joystick connector. So that's pins 4 and pin 6. So there's 2 there. So you plug in the joystick into the tester, and once it's turned on, you press the buttons, so each button will have its own light that'll come on. So you know the buttons work. So that's a start. It's probably not the part you were worried about, but it's always good to know that everything's working. So, all right, well, that's a big chunk of the circuit, but the bigger part is the X and Y axes testing. Took me a little while to think of what that, when I was still kind of poo-pooing the why would anybody need a joystick tester circuit? I was thinking, well, how would you even test that? And you could have a light. The X and Y axes are basically they're just resistor dividers or voltage dividers built around the potentiometers in the joystick. If you want to go all out, you could have. I guess you could have an analog voltage meter with sweeping hands or something on each one. That'd be neat to look at, but that's a little much, I think, for this. You could basically, have, I don't know, like a plus and an all the way to 5 volts and an all the way to ground kind of indicator, which might be wired similarly to what I've done here, but it wasn't really clear. I thought it might be nice to have some kind of barcode. But the barcode, it would seem natural to have the barcode go from 0 to 5 volts, or whatever that would represent. But the 0 position of the joystick wouldn't be at 0 volts. It would be basically at 2.5 volts on each axis. So, what do you do there? So what I settled on, I've got, for each axis, there's 4 LEDs, each of which is, got a 10K current limiting resistor. But so what triggers them? Well, so I've got a set of 4, they're actually op amps, but they're being used as comparators. And so in this case, I've got quad op amp package ICs. They're TL084s, or TL, I guess it's TL084. It's quad, so one chip, 4 op amps. So they're each operate independently. They share power rails, I guess. But so what I did just to make it work like a bar graph, set them up as comparators, and then fed with on each axis. I then set up I took 5 10K resistors, put them all in series, and so each one of those taps in between. You plug the top of the series, so to speak, to 5 volts, and the other end all the way to ground. So each tap in between gives you a fixed voltage because it's just a big voltage divider with those 4 taps in between. And so that was the first thing was, that'll work for, a basic bar graph. And it does, but, as I mentioned, the sort of the neutral position really gives you 2.5 volts. Which is that if you wired this in the kind of the most obvious way, you'd have one LED would come on at 1 volt, and then a second LED the first one would stay on, the second one would come on at 2 volts, and then at 3 volts the third one would come on, the other 2 would stay on, so all the way up to 4 volts, whatever. But in that case, you'd end up with 2 LEDs on and 2 of them off, and kind of a spot in the middle that doesn't really give you a great indication of where things are. And maybe that's the way it ends up anyway. But I kind of thought about this and just didn't feel quite right. I could have used an extra LED, so there'd be like one for the middle or something like that. But, I already had these quad package chips for the op amps, the comparators really. So when you wire up an op amp as a comparator, basically you feed in a reference voltage to the inverting input of the op amp, so the negative mark on the schematic, and then you feed in the comparing, the voltage you're comparing to, or that you want compared. Basically the input voltage goes to the non-inverting input on the op amp. And so if the non-inverting is greater than the inverting, then the op amp turns on and basically goes to the positive rail on its output. So that's how the comparator works. And so it turns on. If you just did that all the way down, you get kind of, like I said, a 4-point bar graph, and which would kind of work, but it wasn't quite what I wanted. Eventually, it occurred to me that you could split between the two sides of, so that on the two LEDs that represent the 0 to, to the 0 to 2.5 side of the range, you could invert the input or swap the inputs so that the fixed, the taps from the voltage divider would go to the non-inverting inputs, and then the input axis from the joystick, well, those two would go to the inverting input. And so instead of being greater than 1 volt, you'd turn it basically into a less than 1 volt kind of situation, and in order to turn on that one LED, and greater, instead of greater than 2 volts, less than 2 volts. And but leave the other side, the 2.5 to 5 volt side, as it was originally, so that you end up with 4 LEDs and 4 comparators, op-amps, wired as comparators. But the bottom of the range comes on if the input is less than 1 volt, and then the next one is less than 2 volts. But then the next one is only if it's greater than 3 volts. And then the last one is only if it's greater than 4 volts. So in the middle, all of the LEDs are off. And then, say, if you're looking at the x-axis, if you move to the left, the one LED will come on that represents less than 2 volts. And then if you go farther to the left, you'll get that one will stay on, but then the one that represents less than 1 volt will come on. If it's centered up, everything goes off, and then if you go back to the right, it'll be, once you get greater than 3 volts, the 1 volt, the one LED right of center will come on, and then if you go farther to where it's greater than 4 volts, both LEDs right of center come on. So I think that's a pretty good version of a bar graph split in the middle. It makes sense to me. And if you're not quite clear what I'm talking about, there's a demo video available. It's available through the Facebook group. Maybe I'll include it in the show notes. But anyway, I've got, since the X and Y axes electrically are basically the same, it's just a matter of, which mechanical direction you're going. I've got essentially the same circuit for the up and down. It works basically the same way. When I laid out the PCB, I tried to make sure that, or made sure that the 4 LEDs for the x-axis go in if you hold the PCB the way I expect it to be, which will have all the power supply stuff at the bottom, and then the LEDs on the left side are running a horizontal position, so representing the x-axis. That's the way the circuit's rotated. On the right side is basically the same circuit, but it's rotated so that the LEDs go up and down. So if the joystick, if you push up, it'll light from the top, and down, it'll light down to the bottom. So something to think about when you're making a printed circuit board for something with a physical aspect like this, so you can actually rotate the parts of the circuit to match what you want. In my prototype board, the only connector I had, out of expediency, I just put down what's a footprint for a single row header, but basically that just amounts to 4 plated through holes, or 5 or 6, I guess, in this case. And in my test, I basically soldered together a connector on a stick, so to speak, or a connector at the end of the wires, and just soldered up the wires, and I was able to test that way. When I revised the PCB, I got a more appropriate footprint for a PCB mount DIN connector, and that's what I'm using. And so when the revised boards are assembled, they'll just have a fixed connector, just like what's on the CoCo, for a single joystick. It'll point out of the top of the circuit. Like I said, as long as you orient it that way, pop in the 9-volt battery, turn on the power, and then you can operate the joystick and watch the lights come on and off, depending on the positions of the joystick and whether or not you're operating the buttons. Again, so perfect? Probably not. I'm not really sure what else you would do. You could probably extend out the bar graphs some if you wanted to. I'm not sure how much it would be helpful. I mean, obviously it's a brand new thing. I haven't really used this in evaluating joysticks to buy or anything like that. So maybe there's some problem with it, but it seems to work for me, and I don't know why it wouldn't work for for me or you or anyone else in the future. So, well, there you go. Went a little long, but there's an overview of what I worked on over the Christmas break, or some part of what I worked on over the Christmas break. And now we have a tester for joysticks. I'll probably have kits available, probably at CoCo Fest, maybe available for ordering by mail or whatever if you so desire. I do have a few of the prototype circuit boards. If you write in some feedback and it's cool, and or if you tell me that you really want one of those prototype circuit boards or a kit or something like that, well, give me a good story, throw in some subs and tiers and whatever. Maybe I'll send you a PCB, maybe even a kit if you're nice. All right, and that, of course, will be feedback, FEEDBACK, at CoCoCrew.org, CoCoCrew.org. All right, well, thanks, and thanks for listening, and, of course, Koko forever. Bye.
If you use OS 9 Level 2 as your CoCo's primary operating system, you know its power and flexibility. Word processing, spreadsheets, program development. But what about tools that help you manage your day-to-day tasks? Help is here with Presto Partner. Presto Partner is an integrated desktop calendar, notepad, phone book, and more. Schedule important events on the calendar and be reminded of these events automatically. Quickly enter notes that are saved to disk and fully searchable. Get a hard copy of any note. Plus, you can perform decimal and hexadecimal calculations in any note. The integrated phone book allows you to quickly store names, addresses, and phone numbers. Search by any field. You can even have Presto Partner dial the number for you with a Hayes or Hayes-compatible modem. Presto Partner also allows you to define macro keys that can perform up to 10 OS 9 commands. Presto Partner is a RAM resident utility. It opens in its own window. Just switch to it with the clear key anytime you need it. Just how useful is Presto Partner? Imagine you're typing a letter on your CoCo when the phone rings. The call is for your spouse, but they're not home. No problem. Press clear to get to Presto Partner and Alt down to create a new note. Enter the message for your spouse, then press clear to return to your letter writing. Say you're working on a program. You need to figure out the ASCII value of A multiplied by 5. Simply press the clear key to bring up Presto Partner. Press Alt down to open a note and type in the calculation. The result is displayed instantly in the note. While working on a spreadsheet, your CoCo starts beeping and flashing red. You press clear to bring up Presto Partner, and you see that your child has a dental appointment at 11:30. You need to call the school to let them know about it. So you press Alt-P to open the phone book. You look up the number, and Presto Partner dials the number for you. Presto Partner is a complete desk inside your computer. Find out why so many describe Presto Partner as invaluable, a must-have, simply the most useful tool for my CoCo. Presto Partner requires a 512K CoCo 3 with OS 9 Level 2 and at least one disk drive. Presto Partner by Keith Alfonso, distributed by CoCo Pro.
Welcome back to Neil's Corner on episode 80 of the CoCo Crew Podcast. Happy New Year, everyone. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday and a great start to the new year. I figured since we ended last year off with a Tetris-themed game when I reviewed Blockdown, that I'd start the new year off with another Tetris-themed game. This game is called Soviet Block, and it was coded in 1991 by John Strong and published under his own company called Strongware. It is a clone, but a very good clone, of the legendary Tetris Falling Blocks game. It requires a Color Computer 3 with stock 128K of memory. Disk or CoCo SDC, Super IDE, or any other disk emulation device you may have. Joystick is optional. Oh, and here's the cool part. It supports the Orchestra 90 stereo sound card, so if you have one of those in an MPI, you're in for a treat. You can hear stereo sound as the pieces get louder on the left or the right, depending on the direction you move them. Because this game requires a CoCo 3, the graphics and colors are super crisp and vibrant. John really took advantage of the CoCo 3 color palette. This game was released right at the end of the CoCo 3 when it got discontinued in 1991 by Radio Shack. However, the game is still available to buy through John at Strongware. There is also a demo version available to download from the CoCo Archives website, which has a few features missing, but you can get a feel of it and see if you'd like to buy the full copy in support. John is a great guy. You can meet him in real life at CoCo Fest or Tandy Assembly, as he usually attends both of those events. In fact, you can buy the game from him at one of those fests, because he usually brings a few copies to sell. I believe it is $15 to purchase. I really like John. He is one of the original CoCo supporters from the past, and he attended Rainbow Fests back in the day. He would be more than happy chatting with you about the past or current CoCo development. On a side note, he is also the go-to guy for getting CoCo-related 3D printed objects done. He produces CoCo SDC, ROM pack, disc controller, and serial cartridge cases, along with other 3D printed cases. Well, there you have it. Another Tetris-style game for you to enjoy on your CoCo 3. Go all out. Hook up your MPI and drop an Orchestra 90 in it for the full effect. Until next month, game on and happy CoCoing.
Does your CoCo 3 run hot? Are you using an older Model 512K RAM upgrade? Or maybe you have a 128K CoCo 3 that could use more memory? The Triad 512K memory board from Cloud9 is the solution you're looking for. Named for its unique triangular shape, the Triad only draws about 22 milliamps of current. That's an amazing 95% reduction in power. Less power means less heat and less stress on your Color Computer 3. The Triad 512K memory upgrade has been in production since 2013 with more than 500 units sold. So whether you need to upgrade to 512K or want to replace an older power-hungry memory board, the Cloud9 Triad is the proven, reliable 512K solution. Often copied, never duplicated. The Triad 512K upgrade from Cloud9. Cool stuff for your color computer. Visit cloud9tech.com for details.
Well, it's that time again. We have reached the end of the podcast. Episode 80 is now behind us, but you can still listen again for a rewind. As usual, I'd like to thank our host, John Linville, for procuring all the news articles and providing us with stellar tech segments. Mike Rowan, for painstakingly editing the podcast each month and creating those super fun commercials. Boise Pete, our CoCo historian. He remembers it, so you don't have to. Last but not least, we'd like to thank all of you who listen and support us each month. We really do appreciate it and also like hearing your feedback. Until next month, happy CoCoing and retro forever.
It's a blast from the past.
Please listen carefully.
CoCo. 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 CoCo.
Dance like there's no tomorrow.
What is this crazy rock and roll music anyway? It's a blast from the past.
Dance, dance, dance. Dance, dance, dance.
CoCo. CoCo. come.